Alright guys, so today we're going to talk a bit about the design process. You're going to be doing this for your 2-point perspective city block. This lecture is a little bit about design process in general, but I think it'll be useful for you to think about what you're doing. So this is a diagram of a quick idea of it where you do research, then you do notations, diagram sketches. I like to call these thumbnails to help you generate ideas. Then you do rough sketches, develop the concept a bit more, refine your sketches and make them close, and then you have your final rendering. And then if it was for the world of design or illustration project or something, you would propose it to your client, publisher, whoever it is, for yourself. If you want to look at it and see if you want to put it in a show. You have to have a brainstorming process, and you're like thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to do a city block. Well, this is the area where you'd be doing things like thinking about what kind of style of block do I want to do. So you'd be like, okay, you do in the middle, you just draw yourself a little circle and say in the middle of it, you go, okay, what do I want? I have to do a city block. So I say, okay, here we go. City block. What kind of city block do I want to do? I gotta go way lower here. Alright, maybe I want to do, you do a couple lines off here and you go, okay, I want to think about a bunch of different ideas. I'm not sure yet. You go, okay, I want to do, maybe you have one in particular that you want. Okay, you're like, actually, I already know what I want to do. So you're like, I don't need to worry about that making, just saying city block. I can say, New York City style block. NYC style. And you can make it a little bigger. Oh, that's not working very well. Okay, you get the idea. And then you can say, okay, what comes out here with my style? Let's see. I'll write a bunch of words. I'll say, I want to put fire escapes. I want to put water towers. What else do I put in New York City? I want to put Flatiron building. Let me see. I want to put maybe a piece of public art. What else do I want to put? Maybe I'll put a triumphal arch. Skyscraper. You get the idea, right? I want to put restaurant. So you're having this kind of process figuring out what you want to do. After that, you could go, okay, I've done my brainstorming. I have to do some small pictures of things. So I'm going to take and actually go, okay, now let's see. I actually at this point might even do something where I go, okay, I want to do, I want to take and do something where I'm going to Google and say New York City architectural details. Having a hard time spelling that today. I'll look at some images and we'll go, okay, here's the Flatiron building, here's the Brooklyn Bridge, here's a big cathedral, Here's the way the windows are. Old brownstones. Some things have a column. I'll look at a bunch of these pictures. I'm going to say, okay, I need to print a couple of these off or save them. You know, hit save as, copy image, save as, and look at a few of them. Or I have a specific thing. I want to say Washington Square Park, Triumphal Arch. So that's like the style of a triumphal arch in Washington Square Park. I maybe want to put this in there, but I'm like, how am I going to draw a park in my city block? Okay, that's not going to work. But I can do water towers. And these are on top of buildings, and so that would be really interesting. Say, okay, I'm going to put a water tower. Okay, I've got some ideas now. So I go back here, and I start doing some small thumbnail sketches and seeing what I want to do, right? So I'm going to do it freehand here and be like, okay, I want to do some kind of water tower. This isn't working very well on the screen, but you get the idea. Have some type of water tower. That's not working very well. You're probably better off actually drawing it a little bit clearer. It's easier to do, of course, when I'm in front of you with a pencil. This is kind of a limited tool, but we'll just say, okay. This would be, in perspective, a little bit of, it's not in perspective, but it's giving you the idea of a water tower. And you go, okay, it's too big. You change it up a little bit. But how would you do this in perspective? Okay, let's just show you real quick if I can with these tools. It doesn't let me undo lines once I draw them, so I kind of have to be real careful here. And I'm not able to use a ruler, so this is problematic. But see how if I was going to draw this in perspective, I could do a block that it would fit inside of. And the ovals are a bit off, but they're ellipses. Okay, let's try this. And each of those spots would have to fit inside of a square. And to find the way they actually would be, I would have to do a square like this. If that was my bottom plane, I have to draw an X through this in perspective. Draw an X in perspective through this. And that would be the middle point of the whole square. And then that would be what I would use to make the oval around. So this would be how I would take and go. Sorry, undoing that. I don't have a Wacom tablet for this. It doesn't work very well. But you would draw between all those lines, and that's how you get the oval. And then the ellipse, I should say, not the oval. And then that's how you have the water tower. And you would keep these reference points because that would be the great way to put your legs in the right place, so to speak. Because you could be like, okay, this is all circular. That's the edge. Now the legs come straight down off of here. And they hit the edge. And do the same thing with all the legs for the water tower. Okay, so you're doing all this for the ruler. Everything you do has to go to the horizon line and the vanishing points. I'm not talking loud enough, sorry. Everything you do has to go to the horizon line and the vanishing points. And so you end up with a situation where you have, okay, here's your water tower. All of this. Zoop, 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 and the legs. But you want to kind of do some thumbnails. So that gives you an idea of actually figuring some stuff out. But you're not necessarily using a ruler carefully, but you're doing it in perspective, get the idea of it. Okay? After you do some thumbnails, you're going to want to take, this is from a book called The Left-Handed Designer by Seymour Schwass. He's doing a design for a cover for a Charles Dickens, Nicholas Nickleby. But you have this idea, you have your brief, which I gave you already, which is to design a city block. And you did your research, which is going online and thinking about things, doing some brainstorming. And you developed the presentation. So you need to go through that process. So you go, okay, preparation, and then this part right here is all about if you were putting it out in the world. Okay, to get a final drawing. I think this gives you the general idea. So you're gonna have you're gonna have an idea. You have a brief or an assignment that I gave you. Then you have to brainstorm the process. Then you have to do some thumbnails. Then you do a bit of work through the original idea to something that works really well. Preparation, and then you finish off the thing. Okay. So these stages are more for like a graphic design, but the same idea happens after thumbnails. You do some more refined type of sketches that look closer to what you want, and then you work through the sketches until you get something that you're really happy about, and that's what you execute. In this case, color illustration. But how's that going to look with what you're doing in your project? It's going to look like this. It's going to look like you doing some stuff where you have some things that look pretty good and, finished, but you're going to have to go in and clean them up a little bit. So you're going to have to go, okay, what do I want to do here? This is looking really good, but I need to get rid of these lines. I need to change this thing. This could be a final, but I don't want it to be all messed up with, see how there's guidelines everywhere this student work? You want it to be really clean. You're going to have to go, okay, what do I want the buildings to look like? This is getting all the detail, but before I do that, you have to kind of have a rough idea in your refined sketch is what I'm trying to say. Is to have like the layout of the buildings decided, which without all the detail looks like this stuff. You can't just freehand sketch it. I'm doing this to show you because it's already in perspective. I'm using a tool that draws straight lines, but you have to actually do this with a ruler and have this general shape all set before you do any of the details. And you want to have some clear idea of what that is. The layout of the block, how the building elevations change. So this is going to be like the first thing you do before you do anything else, is get a bunch of cubes that go to the horizon line, right? And you're going to want to do that carefully and think about what you want the overall shape to be. If this was a New York City skyline, then it would look more like, it would look a lot different. It would look more like this type of thing down here, or this type of thing. But this is still very rough. I want it to be cleaner than this. But these are getting close to being done. But you understand what I mean about the overall shape, right? You want to get that situated before you do any other details. You don't want to start adding all these details unless they're in the right spots, right? And you really don't want to do it and waste your time if you don't really like what you're designing, right? So you really want to spend the time to make sure you got something that you like by doing the brainstorming, yeah? So if you see here, these vanishing points go over here. This person had to, first off, before they did anything else, have the overall shape of the building, which is really pretty basic. The detail is all the extra stuff you do afterwards, right? And this even shape here would go, see how it's actually in line? They just cut away the extra for that. I have to up there. And if you notice in this, I want to point this out, when you start adding details, you want to lay out everything in perspective. So if things have the same roof line or the same top of the windows, then you want to lay out your guidelines in perspective. See how all these windows line up? So anything in the space that lines up, you use the one guideline um, to get that accurate. So you want to lay out guidelines where you want doors. If one's looking straight at you, if there's a door looking straight at you, then that would be actually just a straight box right here. It wouldn't be anything that's looking straight at you, would just be flat, because it'd be like the 1 point perspective face of the letter. But not a lot of things would be like that in 2 point perspective. Even if you see these windows, there's actually a line down the middle of this drawing where there's a corner. Can't see the corner, but it's actually right there. So everything over there, even though this is round, is going that way. Still a little bit. Okay. So you want to lay it all out, get it accurate, get it the way you want it to be. What I mean by get it accurate is get the overall big shape accurate. You want it to look like it makes sense as a big shape before you do any details. That way when you look at it, you're like, okay, does this big shape make sense? Does it look like the greenhouse? Does it look like it's diminishing in space? Yes. Then you start planning out the details and do it bit by bit with guidelines. So this is going to take you quite a while, and you're going to want to think about what you're doing, like actually do what you want to do. This is a really good assignment. This person get an A, except for the only thing I can do as a critique would be get rid of some of the extra bits that aren't making any sense, like the guidelines basically. But on this one, I want to show you something really important that they did after they got the face of the building all set and the big block of this. Okay, let's just highlight the face of the building. It's a big cube. This building's a big cube, right? I want you to see something that's really important that they have a little left over here. They established before any details the middle point of the building. See that? That little bit of the X showing still. They established that, and they used that just like the greenhouse to figure out where they wanted the doors to be and the windows and things. Because buildings are often very symmetrical, so they actually set it up so they would have the door dead down the middle in the building, each side of the door swinging open. And this is really important here. This is something that's kind of difficult to understand. I wish I could show you guys in person, but nonetheless, we'll do our best here. Is this door height is basically, if you think about doors, they're bigger than people, right? Otherwise, we'd all hit our head when we're walking through. Some people have to duck down a little bit, but it should be bigger than a person, but it shouldn't be gigantic. Otherwise, that gigantically up in the space, otherwise it would be as if it was a giant door, which there are giant doors on buildings. So you have to think about, when you're doing this face of the building, if this is a 2-story building that you're making, and you want to establish this right away at the corner, the front corner of your drawing, the light post or whatever, how big is a person in relationship to a building, an average person? Is it that big? seems a little large if that was a person. So we go, okay, so maybe they're a little bit smaller. So you say, okay, there's your person for reference point for the rest of the drawing, because you want doors to be bigger than people but not gigantic unless they're meant to be really, really large opening doors, which happen on certain type of buildings, right? So you want to get the person perspective, the size of a person in there, figure that out right away so that everything kind of makes sense based on people, because buildings are definitely designed to be in relationship to human scale, especially windows and doors. Okay? And when they're really giant, they're meant to make us feel small, so that's an important part of the design. I think I want to caution you to really carefully, really carefully pick where your horizon line is in relationship to the building that you do, and the kind of feeling you want to have. I want to show you something here in this drawing. See how they established a person right away? You don't have to draw a person, but just know where it is. And these are really big doors because those are people. The horizon line in this is about right here. You don't want to get something that's looking way above the horizon line, because otherwise then at that point you're going to have to do 3-point perspective. If something was going way up in the sky, way up in the sky, come on here, there we go. See how there's still 90-degree angle to the horizon? They're perpendicular, the vertical elements, like we did in the greenhouse. Well, if you had something going way up in the sky, it would have to start to converge at another point way up here, and that would get really confusing. So you don't really want to do that. You don't want to have to deal with like having something that's like, we can see the bottom of it, it's getting higher and higher. You want it to be 2-point perspective. So pick a horizon line that makes sense for where you want the viewer to be looking, and it keeps you in 2-point perspective. So this works pretty well. What does that basically mean for you? In essence, to simplify it a little bit, it's to say, pick the horizon line, and then don't try to put anything way too high above it or too far below it. Stay in the zone in the middle of the page. Don't try to put anything too far to the edges. Otherwise, you're going to distort the system. If you try to get something too close to the edge and your vanishing point is, right here on the edge of the page, if your vanishing points are right on the edge of the page, which is what I want you to do. If you try to draw something like this, what's going to end up happening would be it would get really distorted. Oops. What do I mean by that? It would get distorted like this. See how if we draw over the top of this building, if you try to draw anything over here, it's going to look really funny and really small. So you want to stay in the middle zone of it. If you want to really get to the edge of the page, you have to do like this person did and put your vanishing point way off the page to make it feel realistic. And I do not want you to deal with that right now, because that's just going to make you hate your life. So for you, that means you have an 18 by 24 piece of paper. Work a little smaller, work towards the middle. Don't try to put things way out here, unless you want to make them like they're facing us out here and block things out. If they're facing directly at us, then you can put things there and block things up. But even then, that's pushing it a little bit. You want to kind of really want to stay towards the middle of the page. See how they left some white space? I'm okay with that. They put mountains. That was a good move. What they also could do, besides the mountains, and what you could do is something like landscape, is at the end of it all, you don't have to do this when you turn it in. I actually don't want you to. But at the end of it all, if you want to make a really nice drawing that you're saving for uh, your wall or the future, is actually take and cut the paper or get a mat made, which is matting is just a way of cropping something and putting in a frame. And you would have this type of drawing that would show up like it's the hole bleeding to the edge. That's something you could do if you don't like the white space at the very end, but I don't want you to do that when you turn it in, okay? I want you to show me how you did it. The only thing I want you to keep on here, I don't want you to keep any of these guidelines on here. What I do want you to keep is the horizon line on the edge, but not in the building, not like that, not that part of it. And I want you to keep your vanishing points. So when you have your drawing at the end, it'll look like that. And you'll still have the bit of the horizon line that's not in the buildings, okay? Erase it in the buildings. And I want to see those vanishing points down the edge of the page to see how you did it. That's it. I don't want any of this extra stuff. What does that mean for you? It means don't draw your guideline lines like this. Draw them very lightly so that they're easy to erase. And they're like that. Okay? The difference, heavy dark guidelines, gonna make your life a pain. Light lines, what kind of pencil do you use for that? Some type of H pencil. 2H if you have it. You don't want to press too hard or you'll dent the paper, but HB, 2H, one of the lighter pencils. Then when you come back and do the rest of this work, you can really do dark pencil if you want. It doesn't have to be thick. I'm making it thick to show the difference in darkness, but you can do a lot of darker lines and come back and finish your drawing off with those, okay? So you want the guidelines, and then you can come back and really finish it off and add some of the detail. It's really about blocking things out. So just have to remember, anything you do, you want to figure out the shape it's in. This is building off the idea that we've been learning a lot of time about boxing things out. Okay? See how those all go to a vanishing point. Even these stairs do. You do the guidelines. You figure it out where it would go. Even for the little part, which is this little board over here. So you have that done. You know where that's at. You're like, okay, I don't want this to be solid, but I can still do the guidelines. That way when I go and draw it, I know it's in the right spot. So I draw each one lightly, draw the guidelines. After you're done with them, you're probably going to want to erase the guidelines so that you don't get too confused on the whole page. Okay. Someone here is going to get, so then you would go and you would erase these extra ones, right? After you get that done. Someone amongst you is going to want to learn to make something in perspective even spaced. So this is going to be something you're going to want to know. Okay, so say we have this whole front of the building. I'm talking about the area where these posts are. They're all on the same cube. See what I'm saying right here? There's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. How do you do an even space and perspective? This is a challenging thing, but I want you to understand. First, you set the first space, which is the space between the first and the second one. Then you do that. You draw an X in that space. Then you draw your line, a line from that goes through the middle to the horizon line. And then you can take and do an X across, and it'll be the same because the X's are a way, if they're at the same angle, of defining the space in the middle. And so what it would be is that afterwards you would have, if I can try to explain this, I'll show you, this middle line and that middle line are equally spaced in perspective. They're not the post, but the edge of this. It's so this space to that space to that space to that space, it would be the same in real life. In perspective, they're not equal, but they're the same. Does that make sense? You could actually do another one right here. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of that's the same amount of space if you're facing directly at it, but this is equal spacing in perspective. That'll help you do things like pillars that go away from you. You always start with that first one, this one, and then you get each one after that. So this kind of drawing over, I'm going over the top, actually is a little different. They did this one, they wanted each one to be the same. They would get rid of these lines, but this is to show you how you could do 4 of them. You could keep going down this way, right? If you do more and more, you could do pillars like on a colonnade this way. See how these angles are the same? That gives you, and these ones have to be the same. That gives you the same amount of space. There's other ways to do it, but this is the most basic way. Does that make sense? Sorry, that line was wrong. It's this right here. And this would have been 1, 2. So we're getting smaller. It's a little off here because I'm drawing with this tool, but I think you get the idea here. If you have questions, please ask me. I can look at your drawings if you post a picture of it and give you some feedback. Okay? Other thing I want to show you, I kind of showed it to you before in class, and it's hard to do on a computer for the programs I have available, but see how this circle right here is going down in space? If we look straight at it from the barrel too, it would be a normal circle, right? And a circle, to be a real proper circle, should fit inside of a square. So a square has all sides the equal length, right? That's if you're looking straight at it to be like a proper circle. Okay, you have to do it like that, and I have no way of really doing this, so it's not going to work very well. Okay, so that's pretty close to an actual circle. Well, an ellipse is when it's twisting in space, so where this part's either going down or up, where you're going up above or down, and you can see it above you. And so that's these lines right here. See that? That's an ellipse. So to get an ellipse accurate in these type of drawings, you have to actually create, and I'm doing it backwards so I can show you the idea, a box. First I would do the box like this, right? So this shows you that the ellipse is not accurate to the vanishing point. See how that's a box? This is a cube. Always do the front one first. Breaking the rules a little here. And then you would take and you would do an X across this. And that's the middle point of your ellipse. And these are where all the sides should hit with the circle. And so you would take your pencil and go. I'm going to see if I can zoom in here. No, zoom in. There you go. And then I could take and draw with my pencil and go. And I have an ellipse, a circle in space. Ooh, see if I can do it with the highlight. How does this thing work? Oh, that's not going to work. It starts wherever it is. Okay. Then I would do all that over it. Undo. And I would get an ellipse. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, again, please ask and I'll try to do a different type of drawing. Either maybe I'll do one on paper to show you directly if it's still not making sense. I feel like this is a little better than the paper. I could draw on paper and record it, but you can actually see it better straight on and it's in color, so I'm thinking this is better. If it's bothering you guys, then please let me know and I can try to figure something else out here. Alright, so that should take you through the city block. And get you to the point where you're able to get going on it. And I want you to post in the discussion board about what you're doing and show me your progress and spend some serious time on that design. Alright guys, take care. Again, please engage the class through the discussion boards, posting things, asking questions, and showing me what you're doing, because we'd have a lot of time in class for this, so you really need to spend some serious time working it out, and I can give you individual help if you actually reach out to me, okay? Alright, take care.